The first thing that tipped me off wasn't a lipstick stain or a love note. It was her toothbrush. Not missing, not misplaced. Just dry. Bone dry. Like it hadn't touched water or her mouth for days, even though she swore she just brushed before kissing me goodbye. Maybe most husbands wouldn't notice something that small, but I do. See, when you live with a woman who plans dinner parties 2 weeks ahead and alphabetizes spice jars, you notice when routine goes off script. So that morning, I stood in our bathroom, staring at that pristine blue toothbrush, and felt something go slack inside me, like a string pulled too tight for too long. She was in the kitchen humming to herself, eggs sizzling, everything too perfect. I stared at her reflection through the hallway mirror, not at her, never directly, and it hit me. She was overcompensating. Her hair was curled, her makeup flawless. Her tone was chipper, light, too light. Like someone who had just committed a crime and was desperate to act normal. That's when I glanced down and noticed the suitcase she'd used for her girl's trip was still by the front door. Unzipped. Inside, the clothes were neatly folded, but the shoes were wrong. She packed 4 pairs of heels. For a cabin retreat in the mountains? Funny, I didn't realize hiking trails came with red carpets. I asked, "Did you have fun?" And she blinked too long before answering. "Yeah. So relaxing." Her voice wobbled, just enough to ping the radar. Most men ignore those pings. They drink them down, smother them in denial, let them rot in their gut. I don't. I collect them, stack them, count them. I didn't confront her. I just watched. I started noticing other things, how her phone was always face down, how she showered at odd hours like she was trying to scrub someone else off her skin, how she changed her passwords after we'd gone years without them. Then came the final nudge, a nudge, not a slap. One of her bras came out of the laundry with a faint scent of men's cologne. Not mine. Not detergent. Just a ghost of someone else's sweat and ego. She said it was probably from hugging one of the girl's boyfriends. I nodded. Makes sense. She smiled. I smiled. We both knew it didn't. But I let her believe it landed. Because I was done asking questions. I was moving into strategy. Let the bitch dig her grave. I was going to build the stage around it. See, our 10-year high school reunion was coming up. She was ecstatic. Couldn't shut up about how we'd be the couple, her with her new body and influencer sheen. Me with my quiet success she loved to underplay in public. She thought it was her stage. I knew it was my execution chamber. That week, she was glued to her phone. Swiping. Smirking. Even giggling like a teenager. I memorized her patterns. Took mental snapshots. I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg. I was going to gather data. Collate. Sort. Weaponize. By Thursday, I had remote access to her iCloud. By Friday, I had everything. Screenshots. Voicemails. A few blurry but unmistakable photos of her sucking face with a guy I recognized, Josh Brenner. Former football benchwarmer. Now a bloated insurance salesman with a receding hairline and the charisma of a drywall panel. That was her upgrade? I felt nothing. Not jealousy. Not rage. Just clarity. I understood the battlefield now. And I had every tool I needed. I started assembling my guest list for the reunion. People she gossiped about. Women she called jealous haters. Men she flirted with in high school. Her old best friend whom she stabbed in the back years ago. I invited them all. Even offered to cover travel for a few. I made sure every mouth she'd once fed lies into would be there, seated, smiling, unsuspecting. And I booked the AV system personally. I want to give a toast, I said. 10 years of growth, right? The organizer smiled. Of course. You two are like prom king and queen all over again. I nodded, cold inside. Prom royalty, sure. Except this time, the crown was wired with explosives, and she was going to wear it till it blew. She always used to sleep with one leg thrown over mine, like even in her dreams she needed to be tethered to me. But one day, I woke up cold. Her body curled up on the far edge of the bed, facing the wall, breathing steady, serene. I reached out instinctively, brushing her shoulder, and she flinched, not startled, just annoyed, like my touch was a disruption. Sorry, I whispered. She didn't respond. That was the first shift. Just a small one. But over the weeks, they kept coming. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She was planning more events, talking about starting a side business, maybe going back to school. I supported all of it, naturally. Bought her books. Set up her office. Helped build her website. She smiled and said I was the best, but there was something robotic in her tone, like she was reading from a script she didn't believe in anymore. She stopped asking how my day was. I'd come home and tell her anyway, out of habit. Long meeting, supplier flaked, ran into Nate at the coffee shop. She'd nod, eyes still on her phone, thumbs dancing over the screen. Sometimes she didn't even nod. Sometimes she just gave a vague hum, the kind you give when someone on the phone is rambling and you're pretending to listen. Her phone became her favorite accessory, not just in her hand, but fused to it. She took it everywhere, the bathroom, the shower, even to bed. I used to glance at her screen sometimes, not snooping, just curiosity. But one day she turned it away. Subtle, but clear. Like I wasn't welcome there anymore. Just work stuff, she said. Boundaries, remember? I didn't remember ever needing boundaries between us. But I smiled and nodded like an idiot. Boundaries. That was her new favorite word. Along with space and growth and identity. She started journaling, meditating, putting crystals on the windowsill like we lived in a Pinterest board. She said she needed to rediscover herself. I said, okay, take all the time you need. Because that's what a good husband says, right? I didn't want to be overbearing. I didn't want to be controlling. I just wanted my wife back. But what I got instead was someone who came home late and said, don't wait up. Someone who showered before dinner instead of after. Someone who wore perfume to go get groceries and came back with barely a bag. I noticed a new necklace on her that she claimed was from her friend Megan. But Megan has shit taste, and I know that necklace wasn't cheap. I saw a receipt once in her car, a fancy rooftop bar we'd never gone to together. She said she'd gone there for a team outing. Funny, I didn't know teachers had corporate happy hours. And then there was her laughter. That one broke me a little. It changed. Lighter. Area. More frequent. But never for me. She used to laugh with me, snort when I said something stupid, giggle when I kissed her neck, throw her head back at dumb memes we'd scroll through together. Now I'd hear her laugh from the other room, always while on her phone, and when I'd ask what was funny, she'd just say nothing, or worse, you wouldn't get it. I started hearing her close doors when I walked in. I'd come into the room and her screen would go dark. Or she'd pretend she was texting someone else, but the tone was always a little too soft, too fond. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid, that maybe I was just boring now, and she needed stimulation, that marriage ebbs and flows, and this was just a phase. But deep down, I felt it, like something rotting in the walls. The kind of smell you don't notice at first, but once you do, you can't unsmell it. She became more affectionate in public, smiling, holding my hand at dinners, tagging me in old photos with sentimental captions. At first, I was relieved. I thought we were reconnecting. I thought maybe the fog was lifting. But then I realized it was all surface. Just noise. A show for her friends and followers. In private, she was distant, distracted, sometimes outright cold. Mechanical. Like she was checking a box to keep up appearances. I told myself it was fine. That she was going through something and I just had to wait. That love was patience, or some bullshit like that. She started redecorating the house. Bought art I hated. Painted the bedroom a sterile gray. Said she needed a calmer environment. When I joked that it felt like a hotel now, she didn't even smile. She just said, exactly. And that hit me harder than anything else. Because I realized then, I wasn't living with my wife anymore. I was living with a stranger who shared her face, her voice, her habits, but none of her warmth. None of her soul. I still loved her. I still believed in us. I still made coffee for her every morning, even when she started drinking matcha instead. I still packed her lunch even though she stopped taking it. I still left her little notes, which I later found crumpled in the trash. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because some part of me, some foolish, dying part, wanted to believe it could still be fixed. That maybe she was just lost, and I was her anchor. But anchors are heavy things. And sometimes, people cut the rope when they want to drift. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, the kind of dull day where nothing should happen. No holidays, no birthdays, just another square on the calendar. She had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, a rare mistake for someone suddenly obsessed with privacy. I didn't intend to snoop. Honestly, I just wanted to order food, and her browser was already open. But when I nudged the touchpad, the screen flickered to life, and there it was. Her messages. Not texts. Not emails. Something worse. A hidden folder of unsent drafts in her email account, hundreds of them, conversations she'd typed out and saved but never sent. Except they weren't just conversations. They were letters. Love letters. Erotic fantasies. Dark little confessions of how bored she was at home, how she felt trapped in a performative marriage, how he made her feel 20 again. I scrolled slowly, methodically, the words bleeding into my brain like ink into water. She talked about our house like it was a cage, our bed like it was a grave. She mocked the way I say, "I love you," said it always sounded like I was asking a question. She said I made her feel guilty just by existing, that I was so goddamn nice it's suffocating. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Everything just went cold. Silent. Like my body shut off all the alarms because it realized they were pointless. Then I saw the photos. Blurry, low-res selfies taken in what looked like a car, her hair messy, lipstick smudged, eyes wild. One of them showed her hand gripping something just out of frame, but I didn't need to guess. Her bra strap hung down over her arm like a trophy. Another photo was taken in a hotel mirror. She was naked except for a shirt, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. That smile used to be mine. Now it was part of some twisted digital shrine to a man whose name I didn't even know yet. But I would. I kept scrolling. Through the timeline. Through the receipts. Through the emotional trail she left behind like a dog marking territory. I saw a note she'd written to herself, just 3 lines. Don't forget to text him when I get to the spa. Don't let Steve see the bag. Delete location history. She had a checklist for cheating. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not crying. Not thinking. Just processing. Then I closed the laptop. Quietly. No dramatic slam. No confrontation. She was still upstairs, probably in the shower, washing off the sweat from whatever midday lie she'd told herself. I sat down at the kitchen table. Looked around. Everything in its place. Her orchids. Her stupid Himalayan salt lamp. The framed photo from our wedding she insisted we keep on the fridge. I studied it now like a crime scene. Her smile in that photo was wide, almost smug. Mine was soft, stupid, trusting. That man was dead. I don't know when exactly I became someone else. Maybe it was somewhere between her digital betrayal and her checklist of deception, but something had clicked. A lever had been pulled. A switch thrown. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't jealous. I was sharpening. Turning. I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs, light, carefree. She asked if I wanted Thai or Italian tonight, like nothing was wrong. I looked at her and saw a stranger wearing my wife's skin. I said, "You choose." My voice didn't shake. My face didn't twitch. She smiled and kissed my cheek. Her lips were warm. Her lies were warmer. I watched her walk away, and in that moment, I knew 2 things with absolute clarity. 1, she thought she was untouchable, and 2, she was about to find out exactly how dangerous a man can be when he has nothing left to lose. The thing about people who lie for a living is they get lazy. They forget how much they've already said, how often they've contradicted themselves, how easy it is to lose track of the web they're spinning. But I don't forget. I listen. I catalog. I create timelines in my head down to the minute, and I store them like ammunition. So when she told me she had a staff development retreat on a Thursday afternoon, I smiled, nodded, and packed her a lunch she'd never eat. She left in workout gear, because apparently yoga was part of team bonding now. I kissed her goodbye like always, and the moment the door closed, I opened my laptop and started pulling strings. First, the calendar. I knew her school schedule. I knew the faculty roster. And I knew, thanks to a quiet little LinkedIn update she didn't realize I'd seen, that her school had cut all outside retreats due to budget. Interesting. Then I cross-referenced her phone's iCloud backup, not the texts, she deleted those, but the location pings from Find My. She had shared her location with me months ago when we were planning a vacation. She must have forgotten. Rookie mistake. At 2:37 p.m., she was nowhere near the yoga studio she mentioned. She was parked at the Candlewood Suites. Middle of the day. No meeting. No carpool. Just her vehicle sitting quietly in the lot. I didn't call her. Didn't text. I let the silence stretch like a noose. I printed out the map with the timestamp. Folded it neatly. Filed it away. The next day, she mentioned how exhausting the workshop had been, how one of the teachers cried during a vulnerability circle. I nodded and asked, "Did you run into the principal there?" Her face blinked for a split second too long. "Oh, yeah, briefly." The principal, I knew, was in Florida that week. I'd seen his vacation pics on Facebook. I said nothing. Just logged the lie. Then I started setting traps. Subtle things. I left a Bluetooth tracker in the lining of her gym bag. She never noticed. I watched her patterns. She wasn't even careful. She used the same route every Thursday, always claiming it was Zumba night. The tracker showed her car pulling up to the same motel over and over. No classes there. No gym. Just a man with a room and her name in his mouth. I started taking days off work without telling her. I followed her, not closely, never directly. I followed her friend Megan. Megan, the human alibi. Megan, the cover story. Megan, who always seemed nervous when she said hi to me. So I tailed Megan one Saturday when my wife claimed they were doing a self-care day. Megan drove to a cafe. Alone. Met with her sister. Never once mentioned my wife. I snapped a photo from across the parking lot, time-stamped it, and stored it. Then, I waited for my wife to return home glowing, talking about how Megan finally dumped that loser boyfriend. I asked, was her sister there too? She blinked. No, just us. Click. Another lie. Another pin on the board. I built a chart in our garage, behind a false wall. Not with string and pins like some detective cliché, but with data. Dates. Receipts. Messages. Each one layered on top of her excuses. And then I got creative. I created a dummy Instagram profile, generic, attractive, non-threatening. I followed her. She accepted in less than a day. I sent a few DMs. Nothing too flirty. Just enough to see what kind of fish she was. She bit within a week. Told the fake profile she was in a complicated marriage. Said she was looking for fun without drama. I screen recorded every word. Saved it to a hidden drive. Then I checked our joint account. She had made multiple small cash withdrawals every Friday, always under $60. Hotel money. Enough to pay in cash, avoid a paper trail. I checked her Google Maps history next. She thought it was disabled. It wasn't. I saw the routes, the places, the rhythm of her sin. Then I called her office one afternoon to ask if she had left a folder behind, just a casual favor. The secretary answered. Oh, she left early today. Said she wasn't feeling well. Interesting. She told me she had a full day. I thanked the woman, hung up, and waited. She came home an hour later, holding a bag from a boutique 2 cities over. Had a little break in my day, she said. Did some spontaneous shopping. I nodded. Cute dress. I knew it wasn't for me. I knew where she'd worn it first. I noticed a faint red mark on her chest, like a bite she hadn't fully covered. I didn't react. I cooked dinner. Asked about her meeting. She said it went okay. The lies were too easy now. Too comfortable. She was unraveling, but she didn't know it. Because I wasn't pulling strings. I was cutting them. Silently. One by one. I had all the proof I needed. But I wasn't done. I didn't just want truth. I wanted devastation. And now, I had every piece in place. She still smiled at me over dinner. Still kissed my cheek. Still wore my ring. But I was already gone. Already in the shadows, watching her from the trees, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And she had no idea that the man across the table wasn't her husband anymore. He was her reckoning. It was her work's annual networking mixer, a semi-formal event she'd been obsessing over for weeks, hosted in a sleek hotel ballroom downtown, the kind with glass chandeliers that look like melting ice and overpriced wine served in brittle stemware. She wore that black silk dress I once bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed was too special to wear just anywhere. Apparently, tonight qualified. I offered to drop her off, said I'd swing by later, after my own meeting downtown, just in time for dessert and introductions. She smiled, kissed my cheek like a politician shaking hands, and walked inside, heels tapping like a metronome counting down to impact. But what she didn't know was that the hotel's head of security owed me a favor, a big one, and that 3 hours earlier, I'd already walked those halls, noted the cameras, and arranged for a discreet loop to be lifted from the guest access floor where she and her lover always grabbed a drink. I had the footage. Not blurry. Not vague. Crystal clear. Her hands up his shirt. His mouth on her neck. Her giggle echoing through the hallway as they stumbled into room 425, while I was supposedly on the phone fixing a last-minute printer jam for her presentation. She thought she was untouchable. And now, she was standing under soft lights in a room full of her colleagues, laughing with a champagne glass in her hand, completely unaware that her kingdom was about to implode. I stepped in just as the MC was calling for everyone to take their seats for the final slideshow presentation, a recap of the year's highlights. She waved when she saw me, surprised but pleased, thinking I was just the loyal husband showing up to support her. I kissed her on the cheek. You're glowing, I said. Rough day. She gave a half laugh, clearly distracted. Same as always. You made it just in time. Wouldn't miss it, I said, then nodded toward the stage. They've added a new segment. Little surprise I helped with. That made her blink. Confused. Suspicious. But she smiled and nodded, not wanting to cause a scene. The lights dimmed. People clapped. The first few slides were generic, photos of fundraisers, office parties, employee spotlights. Then came the segment I'd titled Integrity in Leadership. The first image appeared. Her, standing outside room 425, hair tousled, shirt slightly unbuttoned, laughing into his neck. Silence dropped over the room like a guillotine. The second slide, her hand on the back of his head as they kissed against the wall. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." She stood frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her grip. The third slide was a 10-second muted clip, her looking directly into the hallway camera, fixing her bra strap with a smug little grin. I heard her exhale a shaky breath. "Turn it off," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't move. No one did. The slideshow paused, still on her face. I stepped forward and spoke softly enough that only the nearest 10 people could hear. "This is your version of personal growth, right?" She shook her head quickly. "This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're screwing someone in the same hotel that's catering your office party." I replied, keeping my voice calm, steady, surgical. "Maybe I'm wrong." Her mouth opened and closed. "We were just talking. It wasn't like that." "Is that what you told him when your dress hit the floor?" I asked, eyes locked to hers. "That it was just a very enthusiastic conversation?" She looked around, as if the crowd might swallow her. "Can we just talk somewhere else?" "Oh, now you want privacy?" I tilted my head. "After making a public joke out of my trust?" Her expression hardened. "You've been cold for months. I needed something. I needed to feel wanted again." "You mean you needed an audience?" I held up my phone, still recording. "You needed lies with applause. But not anymore." She stepped toward me, eyes pleading now. "You're humiliating me." "No," I said. "You did that. I'm just giving you a mirror." Her jaw tensed. Her ego flared. "You're pathetic. You spent all this time playing detective instead of being a man." I leaned in just slightly. "A man protects his home. A parasite exploits it." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then her face crumbled. No more bravado, no more mocking tone. Just panic, raw and real. "Please, don't do this here." I stared at her for a long, heavy moment. The room was still as a grave. Her co-workers were silent. Her boss looked like he'd swallowed glass. I stepped back, tucked my phone into my coat pocket, and straightened my collar. "This is only the beginning." I said it with a smile so calm it chilled the air. Then I turned toward the door, but didn't walk through it. I wanted her to feel it. The moment before collapse, the weight of eyes on her, the silence so thick it could crush a ribcage. I wanted her to know that this wasn't the storm. It was just the pressure drop before the sky tears open. She showed up at the house the next morning, pounding on the door like the world owed her an answer, like she hadn't just dismantled everything with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. I opened it without a word and stood aside, letting her walk in like a ghost who still believed she had rights here. Her face was streaked with last night's mascara, her hair a mess of chaos she hadn't bothered to tame, and for a moment I almost thought she looked human again, just a woman caught in the snare of her own destruction. But then she opened her mouth. "What the hell was that last night?" she snapped, voice sharp, brittle, already halfway to a scream. I didn't answer. I just walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and waited. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she hissed, following me like a shadow. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my career?" I took a sip, then finally looked at her. "You did that." That stopped her, just for a beat, just long enough for me to see the flicker of doubt in her eyes before the venom returned. "I made one mistake," she said, teeth clenched. "And you humiliate me like that? You think that makes you some kind of man?" I let the silence hang, like a noose swaying above her head. "You didn't make a mistake," I said, setting my cup down. "You made a choice. Over and over. You just never thought you'd get caught." Her hands curled into fists. "I was lonely. You were always working, always quiet, always in your own world. I needed something real." I nodded slowly. "So you settled for motel floors and cheap liquor? That's your version of real?" She flushed, rage surging. "You smothered me. You treated me like a project, not a person. You never really saw me." I walked past her toward the living room. "No," I said. "I saw you too clearly. That was the problem." Her voice pitched higher, desperation cracking through the anger. "You're not perfect, Steve. You act like you're so above it all, but you're cold. You don't know how to make someone feel alive." I needed passion, not another passive-aggressive silence. I sat on the couch, calm as ever. And your solution was to lie. Repeatedly. Behind my back. Like a coward. She threw her hands up, pacing now. God, you're so emotionless. Are you even hurt? Do you even care? Do I mean anything to you? I looked at her then, really looked, at the broken woman wrapped in her own delusion, still clinging to the idea that she had some moral ground to stand on. You meant everything, I said. That's why your betrayal means nothing now. She flinched, like I'd slapped her with the truth. You were boring, she spat suddenly, voice trembling. You were so damn predictable. You never challenged me. He made me feel wanted. He made you feel temporary, I replied. That's all it ever was. A moment you mistook for meaning. Her face twisted, desperate now. We were broken already. You just didn't want to see it. I was dying inside. Then you should have had the spine to walk, I said, voice flat. But you stayed. You lied. You fed off me until you could crawl into someone else's bed. Her shoulders slumped, rage losing its footing. You're so calm, she whispered, more afraid now than angry. How are you this calm? I stood, walked over to her slowly, deliberately. Because you don't matter anymore. Not your tears. Not your screams. Not your excuses. You spent months choosing another man, another life, every single time you picked up that phone. You killed this. I'm just burying it. Her lip trembled. So that's it. You're just done. You ended it, I said, leaning in close enough for her to smell her own panic. I'm just making sure you don't forget it. She reached for me, like touch could reverse the tide, like she could seduce her way back to safety. We can talk about this. Fix it. You used to love me. Used to, I said, stepping back. That version of me is dead. You buried him next to every lie you told. She went quiet then, the final mask slipping. Her eyes darted around like a trapped animal's, realizing there was no door, no exit, no emotional hook left to snag me with. I watched her crumble in real time, no scream, no sob, just a silent implosion of the self-image she'd spent years building. I walked past her, opened the front door, and left it wide. She didn't move. She couldn't. Because for the first time, she realized her biggest weapon, her manipulation, was useless here. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I simply didn't care. And that, more than anything, was the thing she couldn't survive. She thought silence meant hesitation. She thought I was retreating, licking wounds, nursing heartbreak like a good little husband with nowhere to go. What she didn't understand was that silence was the sound of planning, of structure, of war being mapped in perfect detail. The day after our last confrontation, I began assembling the pieces, everything she'd ever given me, every scrap of her duplicity, now converted into a weapon. I started with the evidence, timestamped screenshots, location histories, voice memos, photographs from hotel surveillance, and her idiotic, flirty messages to the fake profile I'd created. All of it compiled, cross-referenced, and backed up to 3 separate cloud drives and 2 USBs, one of which I mailed to a P.O. box registered under a dummy LLC I'd formed a month earlier, just in case. I pulled her name off every joint account, transferred our savings to my separate, premarital account, froze the credit cards, canceled the ones tied to her purchases. She found out when she tried to buy something online that evening and called me in a panic. I didn't answer. Just watched the missed call blink like a dying star. The next morning, I scheduled a visit with a divorce attorney, not a loud, messy firm, but a quiet, vicious one known for handling high asset separations with surgical precision. I filed under irreconcilable differences, cited infidelity, submitted my evidence in a sealed folder, and requested immediate action on financial disclosures. While she was still spinning in her drama, trying to guess my next move, I had already filed the motion to secure sole ownership of the house. It was my inheritance, bought and paid for long before she was in the picture, and now I had the paperwork to prove it. I reclaimed the car that was in my name, left her standing in the grocery store parking lot after I pinged the remote shutoff system and had it towed. I didn't say a word. The locksmith changed the house locks the same day she tried to storm back in. She stood outside screaming, pounding the door, until the neighbors came out to watch. I wasn't inside. I was already at my next appointment with her boss. I didn't make threats. I didn't beg for retribution. I simply handed him a flash drive with a written summary of her behavior, the time-stamped affair with a married man from a competing firm, the hotel bills she tried to expense under training, and a video that captured her bragging, drunk and stupid, about how she'd manipulated HR during an earlier incident. He said nothing, but I could see the shift behind his eyes. Policies would be reviewed. Sponsorships reevaluated. She'd be pulled from public-facing roles within the week. Then I sent copies of the core evidence, photos, text excerpts, timelines, to her parents. Not as an attack, just a quiet package with a note that read, "I thought you deserved the truth." No opinion, no accusation, just the facts. The next time she called them, her mother didn't answer. Her father sent her a single-line text, "You disgust us." Her friends were next. The same curated package went out. No commentary, no spin. Just undeniable evidence of who she really was. Every mutual friend we had began to drop her, one by one. Some of them even reached out to me, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. I didn't need their apologies. I just needed her to feel the isolation tighten like a noose. I informed our utility providers that her name should be removed, canceled the streaming services, changed the passwords. She was still calling me then, leaving voicemails laced with fury, denial, tears, threats. I didn't respond to a single one. I let her scream into a digital void while I quietly repositioned everything. I even rehomed the dog she'd claimed to love but hadn't walked in months, sent him to a retired couple with a big yard, the kind of people who still knew what loyalty looked like. The final move came exactly 1 week after I served her. I met with her affair partner's wife. I showed her everything. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply nodded and asked if I had extra copies. She thanked me, told me she already suspected, and walked away with fire in her eyes and a lawyer's number in her hand. That night, I poured a drink and watched the city lights flicker from my balcony. She was probably sitting in some half-empty apartment, wondering where it all went wrong, still thinking she could talk her way out of this, charm her way back into the narrative. But the story wasn't hers anymore. I'd taken the pen, and every chapter that followed would be written in a language she couldn't manipulate. Cold, clean, final. She thought she was playing a game. She didn't realize I'd built the board. She showed up to the charity fundraiser like she still mattered, like the stains on her reputation hadn't already seeped through the seams of her designer dress. Hair curled, makeup immaculate, smile practiced to the millimeter. She clung to the image of the woman she used to be like a drowning person grips a photograph of dry land. The venue was a glass-paneled art gallery, sleek and sterile, packed with donors, executives, the social ladder she used to climb 2 rungs at a time. She walked in on my arm because I let her, because she still believed this was some form of reconciliation, a silent truce, a step toward redemption. But what she didn't know was that nearly everyone in the room had already seen the evidence. Her colleagues, her boss, her board members, her family, her so-called friends. Each one had received the package, discreet, curated, time-stamped, undeniable. Screenshots of her moaning over text to a man not her husband. Videos of her giggling outside motel doors with her shirt half unbuttoned. Audio clips of her mocking me behind my back, calling me a doormat with a wallet. No commentary, no rage. Just her, laid bare, in her own words and actions. And now, as she walked through that room, heels tapping with less confidence than usual, she started to notice it. The smiles were forced. The eye contact was fleeting. Conversation stopped when she approached, voices lowered when she passed. She clung to my arm tighter, trying to compensate with charm, greeting people louder than necessary, laughing too quickly. I stayed silent. Just watched. Every step she took was a new thread unraveling. She leaned into her best friend with a nervous chuckle, whispered something. Her friend pulled back with a stiff smile and a short nod, like she was humoring a stranger on a bus. The first crack appeared right then, in her smile, in her posture. Small, but visible. She tried to shrug it off, kept moving, reached for a drink from a passing tray like the champagne might dull the tension rising in her throat. Then she saw her father. He didn't wave, didn't approach, just looked at her with tired eyes and turned his back. She blinked, as if the image was incorrect, like maybe he hadn't seen her. But I knew he had. He was done. Her mother was beside him, arms crossed, face pale with shame. The room wasn't loud, but the silence she moved through was deafening. I watched her body stiffen with each step. Watched her glance up at the balcony where her boss stood speaking with donors, all of whom avoided her gaze. She turned to me then, like I was her last anchor, her last unburned bridge. "Why is everyone acting weird?" she asked, her voice tight. I didn't answer. Just met her eyes with a look she'd never seen before, complete detachment. Did you say something?" she asked again, the edges of panic beginning to fray her tone. I didn't have to say a word. The MC took the stage to introduce the guest speaker, her. She had submitted herself weeks ago, back when her ego still ran the show. The lights shifted. The mic buzzed. She hesitated, glanced around for validation that never came. I gave her a small, polite nod. Go on, it said. Let's finish this. She walked slowly up the steps, adjusting her dress, clearing her throat. Thank you for coming tonight, she began, voice too high. It means a lot to be here, especially in times where integrity and trust. Her voice cracked. She paused, coughed. Someone in the audience let out a dry laugh, just one. Sharp, precise. A friend of mine, who used to be one of hers. She tried to continue, fumbling through her notes, but her voice betrayed her, trembling now, vowels slipping, confidence evaporating like steam. We believe in transparency, she stammered, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. Someone in the back whispered, do you? She froze, looked toward me. I didn't move, just sipped my drink. The silence expanded. A glass clinked. A chair creaked. Someone else murmured, maybe she should read her own emails. Her hands trembled. Her mouth opened, then closed. The mic caught the sound of her breathing, short, panicked, uneven. Her smile shattered. Not cracked. Shattered. And for the first time in years, she looked exactly like what she was, exposed, alone, irrelevant. She dropped the mic back onto the podium, heels clacking too loud as she fled down the stairs, head down, breath catching. No applause. No sympathy. Just silence. And me, still standing, watching. She turned back once, just once, scanning for a face that would tell her she could still recover. But all she saw was mine, calm, unmoving. And that was the final blow. Because she realized in that moment, as her world collapsed in real time, that I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. And she would spend the rest of her life remembering the night she lost everything, while I never even raised my voice. It happened at her sister's birthday dinner, a cozy, upscale restaurant booked out for family and friends, the kind of place with soft lighting and white linen that pretends to absorb tension but never really can. She had the audacity to show up in red, the color of pride, power, and everything she no longer had, walking in late like she still believed the spotlight belonged to her. Her parents were already there, stiff and silent, eyes hollowed out by the truth I'd handed them 2 weeks prior. My brother sat across from me, arms crossed, jaw tight. Even her affair partner was there, slouched near the far end of the table, trying to blend into the woodwork, pretending he had just come for the risotto and not the woman whose life he helped dismember. She smiled when she saw me, thin, uncertain, a tremor behind the lips. I didn't smile back. She slid into the seat next to me like nothing had happened, tried to whisper something harmless, something polite, but I didn't respond. I just waited, let her squirm in the silence until the weight of unspoken things began crushing her ribs. It was my brother who broke it. So, how's your little hotel hobby going? He said, voice loud enough to cut through the music. She froze, blinked, tried to recover with a laugh that died before it even left her throat. Excuse me. Don't play stupid, he said, leaning forward. Or should we ask room 425? Gasps. Someone at the next table turned. Her sister's wine glass trembled. This is not the place, she began, but I finally turned to her. No, this is exactly the place, I said, my voice steady, sharp, unshaken. See, you've been living in a fantasy, pretending nothing happened, acting like I just forget. You're embarrassing yourself, she hissed. Am I? I said, louder now, pushing my chair back. Because from where I'm standing, I'm the only one here who hasn't lied, cheated, or dragged someone's name through the gutter. I made a mistake, she started, but I cut her off. No, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You planned this. You snuck around. You lied with a straight face while I cooked your dinners and paid your bills and built a life you used like a runway to land in someone else's lap. She stood then, trying to reclaim control. You weren't there for me. You ignored me, made me feel invisible. I gave you everything. I snapped, and the room fell dead silent. Time, money, love, trust. And you spat on every single part of it so you could chase some bloated, broken man-child who can't even look me in the eye right now. All eyes turned to the affair partner. He flinched, tried to speak, failed. Her father stood halfway, torn between shame and rage, while her mother buried her face in her hands. She was shaking now, but still defiant. You're trying to destroy me, she choked. You already did that, I said, stepping closer. I just removed the curtains so everyone else could see it. You always needed to be the martyr, she snapped. Poor loyal Steve, suffering in silence while his wife strayed. Maybe if you'd had a backbone, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. No, I said, leaning in close enough that she could see the absence of forgiveness in my eyes. You looked elsewhere because you thought I'd never leave. You thought I'd swallow it. Smile through it. But here's the thing. When a man finally stops loving a woman like you, it's not loud. It's cold. Final. Permanent. And there's nothing more terrifying than a man who no longer cares if you stay or go. She slapped the table, trembling, eyes wild now. You ruined my life, she screamed. No, her best friend said quietly from the corner. You did that all by yourself. That was the final crack. Her mask crumbled. Her knees buckled. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. You're all turning on me? She cried, looking around. After everything I did for you? Her father spoke then, his voice low but unrelenting. You used to be someone we were proud of. Now we don't even know what you are. She staggered backward like the words were bullets, eyes darting, looking for a lifeline, but finding none. I straightened my coat, walked to the door, stopped just long enough to say one last thing. You wanted attention. Congratulations. Now the whole world sees you for exactly who you are. And then I walked out, calm, tall, untouched by the storm I left behind, because I didn't need to scream to win. I just needed her to finally hear the silence. She disappeared for a few weeks after the dinner, vanished into the shadow of her own disgrace. No calls, no posts, no sightings. But the aftermath she left behind didn't fade with her. Within days, her job let her go under the umbrella of reputation concerns, citing the moral clause in her contract that she clearly hadn't read. Her social circle disintegrated like ash in water. Friends stopped replying. Group chats went quiet. Invites dried up. The women who once gossiped beside her now avoided eye contact at the store, if they didn't cross the aisle altogether. Word traveled fast in our town, faster than she ever imagined, and no amount of staged smiles or Instagram healing journey posts could erase what people knew. The affair partner? Gone. Disappeared the moment the spotlight shifted, blocked her on everything, deleted the photos, even left town, as if scandal was contagious and he didn't want to catch the fallout. Her parents went silent after that dinner, cutting off support, cutting off contact. Her mother sent me a quiet message. I'm sorry she became this. Her father never looked at her again. She moved out of town to a rundown apartment 2 counties over, got a job answering phones for a supply company where nobody cared about resumes or reputations, just that she showed up on time and didn't steal office pens. Her nails weren't done anymore. The dresses disappeared. The light in her eyes that once blinded others was now a dull flicker, buried under the weight of consequences she thought would never arrive. And then came the call. Late one night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I knew it was her before I picked up. Her voice was low, cracked, barely audible. I'm sorry, she said. I don't know who I am anymore. I didn't respond. She waited. Tried again. I lost everything. I know I deserve it. But I still love you. That part was the whisper, the pathetic reach of someone drowning in her own undoing, hoping that memory could save her. I stayed quiet. She cried. Not the performative sobs of a manipulator, but the raw, ugly heaving of someone who finally felt the void she'd created. Can we just talk? She said. Just talk. Please. I paused, then said the last words I would ever speak to her. Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore. Then I hung up. No rage. No satisfaction. Just the sound of a door closing for good. She showed up once after that, came to the house, stood on the porch like a ghost waiting for a second chance at life. I opened the door just enough for her to see me. Her makeup was smudged, or maybe it was the tears. Her lips trembled. Please, she said. I've changed. I looked her in the eye and said, so did I. Then I shut the door. That was the last time I saw her. Sometimes I hear stories she moved again, tried therapy, started a blog about redemption no one reads. She lives in the quiet now, not because she wants to, but because no one will listen anymore. Me? I've rebuilt. I sleep soundly. I laugh again. I wake up without wondering what lie waits on the other side of the bed. And I tell this story not for her, but for the ones like you, who felt that betrayal, that silence, that cold unraveling of the person you trusted most. So thank you for listening. Where are you from? And tell me, did you enjoy the story?